Hello, and welcome to today's special webinar event, How to Assess Team Productivity, Focus, and Burnout Risk. Today's webinar is sponsored by ActivTrak and produced by ActivTrak Media. My name is Scott Becker. I'm from ActivTrak Media, and I'm excited to be your moderator for this special event. I'm honored to introduce you to today's presenters. We have Gabriela Mauk, she's Vice President of ActivTrak's Productivity Lab, and Javier Aldrete, who's Vice President of Products at ActivTrak. Now, before we get started, there's a few things that you should know about this webinar. First off, we want this to be a very educational event for you, so we encourage any and all questions in the questions box in our webinar control panel. Not only will we have people responding to questions during the live event, but we'll also have a dedicated Q&A session at the end of the event where we'll discuss in greater detail some of the top questions that you ask. Second, in the handout section of your webinar control panel, you'll find that we're offering a link for getting started with ActivTrak, as well as links for ActivTrak Media Guerrilla Guide Book Club and our Event Center. So I encourage you to check out those links now and to share them with your friends and your colleagues. Third, at the end of this webinar, we'll be awarding a $300 Amazon gift card to one lucky attendee on the live event. And if you're the winner, you can optionally donate the value of that gift card to one of our selected charities. Thanks to generous prize winners on the ActivTrak Media events. Thousands of dollars have been donated to charity, so thank you in advance if you choose to do so today. The official prize terms and conditions of today's prize drawing can be found at ActivTrakMedia.com. Just scroll to the bottom and you'll find the prize terms and the conditions in the link there. And fourth, an additional prize note, well, we really value great questions from the audience, and along those lines, there's a prize for best question. So after the event, our team will review the questions that everyone asked, figure out which one was the best, and reach out to the winner. So with that, let's review what you'll learn on this webinar. During this product demo webcast, you'll learn how you can use ActivTrak to share productivity insights with teams and individuals, to assess workload balance and burnout risk, to identify how and where to build more focus time into daily routines, and to measure productivity while preserving employee privacy and trust. So at this point, I'm going to turn things over to the ActivTrak team. Take it away, Gabriela.
Perfect. Thanks so much, Scott. I appreciate it. I'm excited to be here with everyone today. Thank you so much for joining us as we kick off today's webcast on how to assess team productivity, focus, and burnout. As Scott has kindly covered, when we think about our presentation today, we'll be doing a few things. One, we'll talk to you a little bit about what ActivTrak is. Two, we'll take a step back and we'll talk about the realities that are shaping the future of work today. And then we'll return back into an ActivTrak demo that can outline for you how you can use productivity analytics to better prepare and to address the new way of working in today's future workplace. After that, we'll shift our focus to some questions and answers. So I'd encourage you all to drop your questions throughout the presentation into the questions box so that as we go through the presentation, if we don't address them, we can certainly cover off on them towards the end of the presentation. Let's start with talking a little bit about what ActivTrak is. ActivTrak is a platform that aims to help you and your organization work wiser. This workforce analytics platform helps organizations gain visibility into how work happens so that you can provide your employees and your managers with the necessary support that they need. The analytics platform focuses on measuring productivity to further understand how the organization functions. And from there, it guides you into setting goals so that you can not only understand where you are today, but you can track your progress as you look to get to where you want to be in the future. Focusing on some major pain points that I think are relevant to all of us is these analytics help us assess burnout risk, identify opportunities where technology may go underutilized, and to better understand focus and focus time throughout our schedules on a weekly basis so that we can be more prepared to address those distractions that are taking place in today's workplace. I'd encourage you all to consider creating your own account with ActivTrak. after today's presentation to get a better understanding of your baseline. So, understanding where your organization is today from a productivity, focus, and technology use is a great way as you think about how, as you move into a different working arrangement in the future, how that new work arrangement might have shifted the way in which your organization. So let's take a step back and talk a little bit about the realities that are shaping the future of work today. We'll start with some interesting facts that I think are likely felt by all of you, but we're going to double click on some of the magnitude of each of them. When it comes to remote and hybrid work, in 2021, 80% of company leaders plan to allow for hybrid work. Now, in the midst of remote and hybrid work, in the past year, we've all experienced sort of the exhaustion that we all take on in this new remote setting, whether that be fatigue on the camera or a level of fatigue in that work, doesn't have a clear start and end. We are facing and addressing this issue of burnout as well. Employees are experiencing burnout 2.6 times more likely. Employees that are experiencing burnout, they're 2.6 times more likely to be seeking a new job. And so that ties to this theme that we're talking a lot about in the future of work, which is the great resignation, as people are referring to it. People are leaving organizations and finding other organizations largely because of burnout and also different working arrangements. So we're up against this need to retain our organization. And we can do that by battling things like engagement and burnout when we see early signs of them. Shifting to that technology topic, right now we see that on average, a typical company uses 137 unique SaaS applications. This presents a variety of challenges. One, that's a large expense, right? And so we want to be thoughtful about the technology proliferation within our organizations today from a cost standpoint. But we also want to be cognizant about it from a fatigue standpoint as well, from a training cost standpoint, and from the sheer confusion that can be brought about when different functions are operating across different types of technology. We can see that technology, rather than being that key enabler to collaboration that we know it can oftentimes be responsible for driving silos in our organization as well, just because of the sheer magnitude of these SaaS applications that might exist. And then finally, and related as well, is this topic of distractions. Businesses lose $600 billion a year in workplace distractions. Now, those workplace distractions formerly could have largely been tied to what was taking place in the office. But today, those distractions are oftentimes driven through the wide use of various technologies, the notifications, the alerts, et cetera. And so it's important to understand the degree to which our employees and our organizations are facing distractions in the workplace. Now, what I want to do for you today is I want to take these 4 key themes that I would hope and assume are all very familiar to those of you who are joining us today. And I want to talk about how productivity analytics can do a few things. I want to talk about how productivity analytics can give you insight into the magnitude of some of these issues within your specific organization. I want to talk about how these analytics can help you size the degree of these issues, pinpoint these issues surfacing early on, rather than so that you can take action proactively rather than reactively. And so we'll do a bit of that in the demo today as Javier takes us into ActivTrak, but I want to continue sort of covering off on these main themes. When we think about work from home in 2020 and 2021, we see that 64% of employees were able to work from home, and 43% of employees are currently working from home. And so what this means is that we're expecting to see an increase in work from home in the upcoming year. And what that means is we need to make sure that we're right sizing support, and we're making sure that your organizations have the level of support that we need, and that we're being thoughtful about how we're using digital technology to give us the insights we need to enable our managers and our employees to work wiser. And so what we expect to see going forward is we expect to see the use of digital analytics to provide us with the guidance and visibility into those things that we once could not see. Everyone's rushing to provide point solutions to their organization. We see that there's an increased demand for innovative visibility as organizations reimagine how they work. And so I don't think that this is necessarily a new theme. In fact, I think a lot of the shift to remote and flexible work was here prior to the pandemic. But as you all know, the need for technology to enable greater visibility has certainly been accelerated by the fact that organizations have widely shifted to this hybrid environment. So, managing today's workforce introduces a new set of challenges. Here at ActivTrak, we're hearing a lot of familiar questions asked over and over again. Our customers are asking, how do I assess pre and post baselines as teams return to the office or go remote? This is a bit of what I was talking about earlier in the presentation as we were discussing capturing a baseline. Organizations are recognizing that getting flexible and hybrid right the first time is a tall order. And so instead, what they're doing is they're having really open and honest, transparent conversations with their workforce. And they're saying, look, we might not get this right the first time, which is why we're putting in place a feedback loop to understand, what it is you need from us from a technology and resource standpoint to be effective in a hybrid or a fully remote environment. And so, as organizations are open to doing a bit of experimentation with their employees, it becomes ever more important to have that baseline. What is your productivity today? What is the technology that's being used? What is the degree of distractions in the workplace? To what extent are your employees able to focus? If you can understand that today, when you take new actions in the future, you can then understanding by comparing your future data to your baseline data, how those actions that you're taking as it pertains to hybrid and remote work are actually having an effect on your organization. And customers are looking to do that as soon as possible. Customers are asking how they can keep a pulse on engagement levels of both their remote and their in office teams. They're looking to measure productivity across teams and individuals. So, for example, how is one team's productivity comparing to the next? How can we take lessons learned from how this team is operating and share them with teams that are operating in different ways that could benefit from the tips and tricks of others? Customers are asking how can I identify how and where to build more focused time into daily routines. They're looking to assess workload balance and burnout risk. So where do they have underutilized resources, and how can they shift the work from an overutilized resource team to an underutilized one? And then finally, from that technology standpoint, they're looking at how they can invest in the right technology and training to power team productivity. So I want to talk a little bit about how ActivTrak works, because the answer to how to answer the answer to a lot of these questions is to leverage productivity analytics provided through a platform such as ActivTrak's. And so the way that this works is that ActivTrak deploys agents to users' computers, and work activity data is collected in the ActivTrak platform. Now, over time, as data is collected, data is visualized in real-time dashboards and reports. And report subscriptions can be configured to share the data with managers and individuals, even if they are not application users. So the idea here, and I want to take a step back, is to use the analytics or use the data that's collected over time to produce a series of insights. And then those insights are leveraged so that managers can have conversations with their teams and with their individuals regarding these topics so that they can openly collaborate on solutions for how to work wiser. And so Javier is going to get into how to do that in a little bit here. But before I do that, I want to lay the foundation for how we think about time when we leverage a solution like ActivTrak. Now, there are 5 key categorizations of time that I want to call out here. We have productive time. And so productive time is time spent in productive work activities. And so when you use a solution like ActivTrak, we have the ability to automatically classify a series of applications and websites into productive and unproductive. But we also give you the opportunity to customize those categories as well. So for example, one application for a particular function might be deemed unproductive. So let's say we'll deem a Facebook unproductive for an engineering team. Facebook might be highly productive for your marketing team. And so you can leverage the customization capabilities of the platform to categorize time based on the work that's being done within each team. And then we have the metric around productivity efficiency. So if your organization operates like mine, we don't want to we personally don't want to take away the freedom or the trust within our employees to use their computer as they see fit. And so for some, that might mean buying tickets to the basketball game that evening, or hopping over into personal email, or taking a minute to read the news outside of their typical work activity. And so when we look at productivity efficiency, we recognize it's important to understand the total time that's spent on the digital device and then the time that's actually being spent in productive activity. Now, the goal here isn't to certainly raise a level of insight that leads to to a level of penalization, but instead it's recognizing that total time still has an impact on our fatigue and our potential burnout and our engagement. So what productivity efficiency does is it lends us that insight of how efficient our employees are being while they're on the computer or their digital device. Focus time is an insight around the time spent in a single application or website versus switching between tabs or application. Focus time is oftentimes where we find ourselves being the most creative, when we're problem solving, when we're really deep in our work and we can reach that state of high level of focus and high levels of detailed sort of activity. Collaboration, on the other hand, which is just as important, is the time that we're spending working with others. So that's time spent in chat, in email, meeting applications. We're really communicating and we're collaborating among one another, both in asynchronous and synchronous ways. And then finally, multitasking, which is a form of productive time spent rapidly switching between tabs or applications. What we recognize is while focus time is really important for creativity and problem solving, multitasking isn't necessarily unproductive. Instead, it's oftentimes the behavior that we see in our managers, where they're switching back and forth between multiple applications, answering questions from those of their direct reports, multitasking during certain activities, whether that be meeting time or otherwise. Now, to be clear, focus time, collaboration time, and multitasking time add up into our productive time metric. And so it's important to call that out, as we understand that productive time is all good, valuable time, but it becomes even more important that we can understand the breakdown of how that productive time is comprised. Now, before we hop into the demo, one other piece that I want to highlight for you here is that there are a lot of different use cases when we think about productivity insights. We think about ways in which we can manage our workforce, manage productivity, and manage employee engagement. It's important for us to use this platform to understand how we can benchmark against ourselves at different moments in time and how we can set goals. And it's important that we can think about the way in which we use technology and the way in which we can develop our people based on what we identify in the solution as being opportunities to become more efficient or more optimized. Now, the reason I call all 6 of these out is that as we go through the demo today, I want you to think about the use cases that might be most relevant to your organization and recognize that it is not a one use case solution. In fact, oftentimes we find that our customers are using ActivTrak, not only to address, their need to better understand how they can optimize their workforce, but also because they're really curious about the employee experience and employee engagement. We see that this is a platform that's oftentimes utilized across operations as well as HR and as well as technology. So all 3 leaders within the organization can really come together and utilize the data for various reasons. Oftentimes, the solutions calling upon all 3 of those key stakeholders to come together and be a part of that solution. So as we shift over to the demo here, I want to talk a little bit about what our demo will focus on. We'll look at how to measure productivity while preserving employee privacy and trust. We'll look at how to assess the balance and burnout risk, identify how and where to build more focus, and then how to share the insights. So I'm going to pass it over to Javier here, who's going to talk a bit about how we can do each of these, and he'll be hopping over to the solution as well. But before we'll do that, we'll cover off on the first one, which is in preserving employee privacy and trust.
Thank you, Gabriela, and happy to be here for everyone. The first thing in our platform always starts with this: privacy, trust, transparency. And our foundation is that we have a number of controls to protect sensitive and personal information. And we make those available for the different customers that come to us for the different use cases that Gabriela was mentioning. And that allows people to configure the solution depending on their industry, their function, and their goals. and they can go very open or very restrictive in the type of data that they want to make available. And so the key pieces behind that are general privacy controls, and that exclude in certain different types of analytics the capture of sensitive information. The second one is that uh, the key above that bedrock is that you're able to define different role-based access. What that means is that people in an HR or an operations role may need to be able to see a little bit more information that helps them address organizational health issues or process inefficiencies and bottlenecks, and therefore they usually have more access. Whereas people in a team setting, like a manager or an individual, may see a subset of that information. The second part of the equation is segregated data access, and that has to do with who sees what information. And here you have a number of flavors. The most common one is that you see information within your hierarchical structure. That means an individual sees their own data, a manager sees the data of themselves and their team, a director sees the data of their teams, and so forth and so on. Other flavors include where people only see their own data. So you only configure this to see your own personal information and nobody sees anything of anybody else other than yourself. So you have all these flavors. Sometimes you have cross-functional teams that need to see each other's information for whatever reason. So, but the key here is the flexibility to manage that. The third part is when is this data collected and what type of data is collected. And that's where scheduling comes into play. Different companies and roles work differently. We have full flexibility on whether we are capturing information 24/7 or only during work hours or only during core hours, right? Where everybody's supposed to be online and collaborating together. So all of that is configurable, and different teams and even different individuals can have different schedules for that. So that it's all tailored to the level of access that the organization wants to give to them. But all of these pieces of the puzzle are incredibly important to make that transparency and to be able to convey the type of contract or commitment that the organization has with their employees with regards to safeguarding this information. I think that was one of the questions that started to come through the chat, so I wanted to make sure it was covered in detail. We obviously can get deeper in the Q&A part of the session. So that's the first step. Now, getting into the demo itself, if you can advance, we're going to start by showing you the application live and starting with the ability to assess workload balance and burnout risk. So I'm going to share my screen here. Hopefully everybody's seeing it at this stage. So this is the ActivTrak user interface. To restate some of the items that Gabriela mentioned, what this is surfacing is information that was collected by our data collector agent being installed in a number of computers. And in fact, we're going to show you this demo in the context of our own ActivTrak organization. You're going to see actually our names showing up here as we go through this because we use this on a daily basis. And all of that data is captured. It gets funneled up to our cloud where it gets clean, classified, and we add context to it so that we can present it in the form of insights and analytics that I'll show you through this demonstration. So in this, I'm logged in as a manager that has access to a number of teams under my organization. And it's configured to only focus on the areas of our analysis that have to do with coaching and being able to provide coaching recommendations as well as insights into my team's activity and my own personal activities. This first part, coach, surfaces the key areas where there might be a need for an intervention or the need for help from the coach to or from the manager to the team members of those teams. And the ones that we're highlighting here are high utilization, which might be indicators of potential burnout, low efficiency, which have to do with that metric that Gabriela talked about before, about the amount of time on business activities versus not. And then low focus, which has to do with how you're conducting your activities. In the spirit of starting first with the first one, we're going to go with high utilization, which allows us to find very quickly and easily the team members that might be working too many hours, too long hours, or are not getting enough break time through their day. And that over time can spell out a risk of attrition, can spell out a risk of burnout. In this particular case, 3 team members have made the list here of coaching opportunities around high utilization. The first one is actually myself. I'm over my healthy range by about 30 minutes a day, and this is by looking at the last 30 days of activity. My healthy range is defined here based on my goals for my own team. And you can see that I went over that, and that's why I got flagged as being an opportunity to basically get a little bit more downtime, get more breaks into my day, and perhaps take a day off here in the near future. There are other team members that are in that particular area. Fernando and Lee are others where they're not quite outside their healthy range, but they are not taking enough breaks. And that's why they got flagged as a potential opportunity for me to have a conversation with them. The other thing that we do is this notion of providing coaching advice that is personalized to the type of opportunity that we're presenting. Here is where we say, if you were to have a conversation with these individuals, what can you talk about? Hey, how can I help you get more efficient and get more time off, spend more time with your family or time for your own? Is there help that I can provide by hiring other people or giving some of your responsibilities to somebody else so that you're not carrying as much of the load, right? What are other potential things that we can do? Set your calendar to block off distractions or reduce the amount of meetings that you're taking that maybe are forcing you to stay longer hours. So there are all sorts of coaching opportunities that can be presented, but we help our users by giving them some ideas on how to engage their team members in that respect. The other thing that I can do as a manager is I can drill into some more details around workload balance and what is the picture of my full team. So this is going to provide me a list of my team members and how they are compared against these goals or this healthy range that we define for them. And you can see the different healthy range for different team members depending on their expectation of activity in the digital world. Most of them are in the green zone, except a couple of folks, actually myself, on the top. But this is another way to attack the problem, which is, could I give some of the tasks of the folks at the top of this list to the folks at the bottom of this list? Is there an opportunity to share the load a little bit differently so that we can help team members that are getting close to the red area become more healthy over time? So that's the first area that I covered. Let's talk about the next one on the slide, which gets into the identify how and where we can build more focused time into daily routines. So this speaks to the challenges that Gabriela was mentioning at the beginning. There is this proliferation of SaaS tools and applications that are great, sound great from a marketing perspective, but once they get into the workplace, you end up not understanding where should I invest my time? Are there 3 different tools to do the same thing? Where am I getting pulled into too many meetings? Where am I getting pulled into collaboration discussions through MS Teams, through Slack, and others? And so for that, going back to the demonstration, we have another opportunity type which has to do with focus. So I'm going to click here on the focus tab, and now I'm going to drill into a set of coaching opportunities with other team members regarding their focus time. The way we calculate focus is by understanding how people are progressing their day during their within their different applications. If you are moving across a lot of applications in a short amount of time, let's say 30, 60 seconds, we're probably going to flag that time as multitasking. When you're spending a lot of time in Slack or MS Teams, we're going to flag that as collaboration. And then what you're spending a single threaded piece of work, whether it's writing a document or doing some research, will be qualified as focus time, right? And that is obviously important for different roles at different levels. That means that certain roles like product developers, designers, product managers, architects need focus time. They need this deep work without interruptions, while as others, maybe in a support role or maybe in a managerial role, have a lot more need for collaboration or even multitasking, right? So it's important that we tailor the goals around focus time regarding to the role and function of the team member. In this case, there are 3 individuals in my organization that haven't met their goals around focus: Suzanne, Matthew, and Jorge. And the main driver for not enough focus is Zoom meetings, right? That is maybe sometimes self-explanatory, but if you look at Matthew, 61% of his digital time is spent on Zoom. That's a lot, right? For Suzanne, 57% of the time is on collaboration. So how can we learn from this and say, maybe we need to carve out certain meetings out of our schedules, maybe we need to consolidate others, maybe we need to put some blocking during certain times of our day, like muting notifications from email and Slack and MS Teams, so that we don't get pulled into that little red dot that calls our attention, or that little flying notifier banner that comes through when an email comes about. How do we get our blockage of that so that we can focus and get deep work done to get creative and produce innovation? So, so that's another area where we help our customers identify where are there pockets where that's not happening and what are the main culprits behind that. Obviously, from here, as I mentioned before, you can drill and get a lot more detail of what's behind this if you care to do this at the team level or at the individual level. So handing over back to the slides to just touch upon the last part. The last part that we're going to get to is a little bit of a closed loop of what I just showed you, but then finalize with how do you share productivity insights with individuals so they can see their own information and they can help manage and redesign their days, how they help get better on their own personal goals, and also how they contribute to the overall team productivity. So I'm going to switch back to the demonstration. And I'm going to go to the last tab of this coach feature, which is the progress report. This is where we flag we track the progress that different individuals that have had coaching opportunities over the last few months and figure out, did they stay in the same patterns that we observe on them? That means they stayed in the red, meaning Fernando has been in the red 6 weeks plus in a row around high utilization, myself 3 weeks in a row, and different team members in that, like on the low focus, whereas others were flagged earlier in time, but now they have gotten out of it, and now they're in the green. Right now they got lower utilization; they're no longer outside that healthy range. Same on the focus area, right? They have improved, and this is very important because we want to praise the team members that have gotten better at this particular scenarios, or maybe it's praising the manager that helped establish an environment or hire more people to solve whatever was a problem that was at hand. And so it's very important that we have this closed loop so that people can see how we're making improvements of our digital footprint and getting better in these patterns that over the long run can lead to exhaustion, can lead to fatigue, can lead to attrition. So that's why this is very important. And with that, I'm going to fly into my own personal information to give you a flavor of the abilities or the capabilities in this module called Personal Insights that we allow organizations to share with each individual. So this is the part where you see your own. Imagine this like a Fitbit summary that you get once a week or once a day, where you can track your own digital activity, how you're doing against your own productive, focus, and collaboration goals. How does this look like through the week? This is our last 7 days. You can see that, thank God I didn't have activity over the weekend. This was yesterday. What is my weekly trend? So I've been hovering around the 9 hours of productive time every day, with one exception this particular week. And so I have some improvements to do to get out of that burnout zone, as I showed you before. But also, you can see, well, what is driving my lack of focus? In this case, a bunch of collaboration from Slack and Zoom, but also there are a lot of notifications that are causing context switches or attention shifts from me coming from email. So this gives me a quick idea of what are the things that are taking away that focus, that deep work time, and when is it happening through the day. Orange means focus time, so I get my best focus time at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, whereas in the middle of the day, I have very limited ability to do that because probably I'm loaded with meetings. And then I can also track my own well-being and my habits of, am I overutilized? How many days of the week have been overutilized on the last few weeks? So you can see how that is trending. Where can I get better? When are my usually days starting at 8 in the morning and end up around 6:30? How can I get a little less of this, a little more of the break time? And where am I spending my time, right? Chat, messaging, office products, meeting software are my top 3, but you can see how I'm doing. And more importantly, what can I do about it? And this is where our Productivity Lab team, which Gabriela owns, provides tips and tricks to get better around your own personal focus time, balance and wellness, and productivity. So this is kind of the last part of the equation, as Gabriela was mentioning. This is accessible obviously through our user interface, but also you can subscribe to it by clicking this button and basically creating an email subscription that you get on a weekly or daily basis to track your own metrics and your own improvements over time. So with that, I'll pass it over back to her. But this is a quick whirlwind tour of ActivTrak.
Thanks so much, Javier. I appreciate it. What I want to do before we close off here and we shift to questions is I want to cover this key topic that oftentimes arises as we go over the benefits of productivity analytics, which is how do I go about introducing ActivTrak to my organization? How do I go about having a conversation with my employees about the desire to leverage these behavioral analytics for good and for the insights that allow us to give them the support that they need? There are four key principles to a successful rollout. First is to be transparent and make sure that you're communicating with your organization why you're leveraging these analytics and how you intend to use them. It's important to make sure that you protect employee data privacy, and in doing so, that you're also sharing with your employees your commitment to doing this. Third, be clear of what you are collecting. It's helpful to explain to your employees and managers exactly how you're thinking about the classification of both productive and unproductive, and that you're able to answer the questions in terms of how these words are defined and how the insights are rolling up. And as you think about how the insights are rolling up, you want to make sure that you're also making sure that you're sharing productivity insights with both employees and managers alike. As you're transparent about the use of ActivTrak, you can make the commitment to share the insights as well. This oftentimes is coupled with goal setting. As the organization thinks about what their baseline is, together you can also set goals, track the progress towards achieving them, and then, of course, celebrate the achievement of the increased productivity, focus, and workload balance across your team. Here at ActivTrak, we equip our customers with a resource kit for introducing ActivTrak. This includes a messaging guide and checklist, a slide template for introducing ActivTrak to people managers and leadership, an email template for introducing ActivTrak to employees and inviting them to a town hall. And in that town hall, we also provide a slide template for you to share with your employees that answers a lot of the frequently asked questions. And then finally, a follow-up of FAQs to address many of the questions that your employees are likely to ask. So we encourage you all, as you think about, leveraging ActivTrak, to download these resources and give yourselves a head start in terms of having open and honest conversations with your employees. Key takeaways for today cover: productivity analytics are essential for providing visibility and timely support in the world of hybrid and flexible work. It's important to leverage and communicate privacy controls to protect that sensitive data and preserve employee trust. Third, identify and accommodate where to focus time is happening in the daily routines of your employees and your managers. Continuously assess workload balance and burnout risk for timely, tailored, and relevant support. And finally, share productivity insights with teams and individuals to create a culture of transparency and collaboration. So with that, I'd love to turn it back over for questions and cover off on some of the things that have surfaced throughout today's presentation, and hopefully clarify or dig deeper into those topics that were of interest.
All right, super. Well, that was a great presentation, a great demo. I mean, it's really fascinating insights into the way that we work now, and really interesting coaching focus as well. So we've had a ton of questions roll in, so let's just get straight into them. This first one is from Ryan, and it came slightly before you showed a slide a minute ago, but he said, what is the best, easiest way to not only get started with an assessment, but get team buy-in to be transparent, forthcoming, and engaged?
Sure. So I think, to your point, we might have covered that off a little bit earlier, but I'd be happy to dig deeper, which is, when you think about leveraging ActivTrak, what I oftentimes do is I level set with customers, and leaders of their organization who are asking the same question and say, ActivTrak needs to be part of a bigger program. And that program for you today might be the shift to a remote or a hybrid work environment, or it might be the shift to being back in office. In either case, I think we're all experiencing a type of shift. And that shift requires us to, be in tune with our organization and make announcements around what the future looks like and what it holds. And so what ActivTrak is it's an enabler to however you've decided to create a workplace in which your organization can be productive. And so, for that reason, what I oftentimes say is roll out a program focused on providing insights to your managers and your employees on how they can work wiser. And cite ActiveTrak is the key enabler that's going to allow you as a leader and as a manager to provide proactive support so that that can take place. I oftentimes say that if you're just rolling out ActiveTrak as ActiveTrak, you oftentimes are likely to get that pushback because the question becomes, how is this going to help me, and how is this going to be something that makes my work easier, more efficient, more effective, etc. And so you want to make sure you always have a bigger picture beyond just collecting the insights. The idea is that you're collecting those insights in service to a broader mission, oftentimes focused on creating a more productive workplace, making sure that your employees are feeling engaged, making sure that you're addressing a burnout issue that seems to be pervasive within your culture. My number one suggestion is to be aware of what you're actually looking to solve for, and ensure that ActiveTrak is an enabler in service to that bigger mission.
Those are great points. I think one other element that Ryan was getting at there too, and encouraging the team to be transparent and forthcoming, is some organizations are sensitive to the use of productivity monitoring tools. What's a good way to pitch it as something that's a benefit rather than sort of like something that's really sort of looking over their shoulder?
Sure. So
Yeah,
so
I can.
ultimately, this comes down to the culture that you've created. Oh, go ahead, Javier.
No, no, go ahead, Gabriel.
Yeah, ultimately, I think that this comes down to the culture that you'd like to support within your organization, which is focused on improvement and enablement and unlocking that potential, right? And so I think it's really important to shift the conversation away from monitoring and towards improvement and towards support. Now, there are a lot of different ways that you can position that to your organization. I think I just hit upon a handful of key framing considerations that I would suggest you consider. But what's far more important in this conversation is the way in which you follow through. If you choose
Hmm.
to leverage a solution like ActiveTrak, you identify ways in which you can address key things that matter to employees, such as burnout, such as engagement, such as training opportunities, and you don't address those issues, well, then that ends up you end up facing backlash, no different than how it is across other solutions in your organization, where people begin to wonder why you leveraged it in the first place. Javier, did you want to add to that?
Yeah, what I wanted to add is that I think it's like everything in life, right? If you want to get better at something, you need to be able to observe yourself, and this is where Fitbit and Apple Watch and anything you do to improve your golf swing, all those things require you to do something. Use a wearable, film yourself, do all these things. The same applies in the workplace. We just haven't never tried that, and it's understanding how you work and your patterns can lead not only to grow in your career and get better at something, but also do it in a way that is balanced for your life so that you can have well-being and you can take care of your own self and not just work for work's sake, right? So that's part of how we turn this into, or helping our customers explain to their employees, is like this is going to be a win-win for both the company and the employee, because everybody's going to see their own insights and get better at them.
Great points on both of those answers. So, and one of the things that Gabriella, I think you touched on a little bit, is something that Omar is asking about. How does burnout affect productivity? What do you guys see?
Yeah, so in my mind, burnout is kind of on a curve, right? That burnout for a short amount of time prior to reaching its maximum point is lending to a lot of productivity, right? People are beginning to work longer hours, and people, as a result, as they're working longer hours, you're seeing either faster or greater output, which can lend itself to being greater, to more productivity. Right. That being said, burnout oftentimes isn't sustainable. So as we see those increase in hours, you might get a lot in that short amount of time, but oftentimes that ends up in a decrease in engagement over time as people are trying to handle those great levels of fatigue. And so it's important to understand that when we can see the amount of hours continue to increase, might be a result of people's commitment to your organization, their passion in their work, their desire to produce. But if you don't understand, if you don't keep track of how many times week over week that person has that level of high hours or high yeah, so if you're not keeping track of those high level of hours week over week, then what you miss is the likelihood that that person ends up falling off of that increase towards levels of disconnect, and that end up threatening their desire to stay with the organization over time. So that becomes a really important piece to be aware of, because while it might present itself as an increase in productivity, there's likely a diminishing return.
Yeah, and then there is
Gotcha.
the angle also of the quality of work, right? Over time, you make more mistakes because of that
Yeah,
burnout scenario. Therefore, your productivity goes down. So it's not
right.
sustainable.
Super. Um, Ned asks a related question, which is what ActivTrak programs are available to help workers cope, deal, or manage, employee burnout and workplace stress?
Javier, do you want to take that one?
Yeah, well, we have internally applied a number of learnings from our own tool that we share as best practices with our customers in the form of templates or guidance when they're doing that. We don't have per se a one particular program specifically for that, but we have a number of guides that help managers identify and manage burnout. I think there's one to particular that it's in our website that is, I think, the Manager's Guide to Burnout. That might be a good helping resources for that. But the way that we have also used it internally is to identify where, as the coaching demo called out, when we need to have a systematic way to manage that. For instance, in our case, we actually created objectives and key results, OKRs, that we put in place for people that were consistently in that area, and that it became part of the goal of the manager and the individual to get out of that unhealthy area, right? So that's an example. So I think in terms of where I would recommend the audience to point to, I would say that Manager's Guide to Burnout would be a good way to start.
Okay, great.
Yeah,
Manager's
I
Guide
think
to
the other
Burnout.
piece that I would add to the other piece that I would
Yeah.
add to that too is the ability to subscribe within the product, right? And so when we can subscribe to ongoing insights, what happens is we've created a habit, right? Where we created a level of awareness in terms of how we're behaving and how we're approaching our work, so that we know that we can not only change our own behavior, but we can also have conversations with our manager about things that we might need from them or from others to make our work to more productive and to better enable us. And so I think the second part of that is building this into your weekly, daily habits, so that you're taking those insights and you're adjusting your behavior in a way that you are managing burnout, managing engagement, managing productivity, et cetera, both for yourself and alongside your manager.
Okay, super. Next question comes from Garth, who's wondering, is this just looking at time a specific set of applications is used? Obviously you were talking about switching in between them. And then I guess I'll expand on Garth's question a little bit. Is there anything that you're able to take into account sort of outside of what's happening on the computer itself?
Yeah, I can take this one. So the information that is being collected is predominantly in around the work workplace computer. We don't do any tracking outside of that because we want to respect the privacy around personal devices and mobile devices and all of that. We do look at, in addition to the data that we're collecting in terms of activity in different applications and websites, which is what our agent tracker is doing, we also complement that with third-party pieces of information. Things like identifying whether you're co-located or whether you're not co-located. That gives you usually a good indicator of whether you're in an office or in a remote setup. We also complement with other pieces of information to understand organizational structure, to understand what's happening in other tools like Salesforce.com. Usually people want to know, for instance, well, I understand that they were in Salesforce.com 30% of their time. What were they doing? And that's where we pull in through APIs and integrations we have with other tools, the rest of the story, so that we can understand more what is happening, what is the context, and paint the full, transparent, complete story of how work is happening, not just what's happening in that particular computer, but what's happening in combination with all the other signals that we're seeing.
Okay. Gabriela, did you want to add anything on that one?
No, I think that's perfect. Thank you.
Okay, super. Next question comes from Paul, who's wondering how granular are customization settings for various metrics, like on a per employee basis? So he's offering as an example, in a team, a work from home parent is going to be subject to different distractions than a single person. So, are there any settings like that or considerations like that?
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. When I was walking through the demo, I didn't cover the interface where you set your goals as an example, but that is one place where you can configure that by team or by individual. And this allows you to get really granular about what you expect a particular person would do with regards focus, productive, and collaboration time, right? So somebody in the setting, as the example called out here, may be expected to have more collaboration time or more multitasking time and less focus time, as one example. So that's how teams can tailor and customize this for different roles and different individuals. The other angle is what Gabriela was mentioning earlier in the presentation, which is classifying time, right? So if you have a particular role that needs you to use a certain set of applications, as the example, LinkedIn or Facebook or Twitter, that might be part of your job. And therefore, you want to classify them as productive as part of the business activities for one individual, but maybe not for others. And that is not from a punitive intent, but more from the intent of, are you spending time on the things that are aligned with your role versus are you taking time off to do personal stuff, which is totally expected and normal, but it's a way to provide that clarity and context. And we allow this to be done at the team level and at the individual level.
Nice. Next question comes from Kristen, who's looking for some feedback on how your teams have reacted to this. She's wondering, was there a shock that Big Brother was watching, or did they buy into it once you showed the analytics?
It's a great question. I'll take a first stab and I'll let Gabriela complement. I think we all at the beginning had a little bit of that shock. I'd be lying if I would say no. It didn't feel a little bit out there initially. But I feel that is very similar to a bunch of other technologies that over time have become mainstream. Initially, putting your own data in LinkedIn was considered a no-no. It's like, oh my God, I'm going to put my resume out there in the public for everybody to see. That's crazy, right? Same reaction here. Initially, the first added is like, well, I'm not so sure I want to be part of this. But after you see the value that you can get looking at your own activity and truly understanding how much time I'm spending in meetings, how much time of my day and my week I spend in Slack and in MS Teams, I think it's eye-opening and it's something that I don't want to live without. I might be an exception here, but I wake up and I look for my email of my personal insights dashboard to see how did I did yesterday on focus, how did I did yesterday on trying to get a little bit less out of the burnout zone and things like that. Because this ability to see your own helps you take different attitudes through the day on how you design your day, how you decide if, hey, should I take this call in front of the computer or should I walk around the block and just take it from my phone to get a little bit more of non-digital time, right? So this has been at least my personal evolution on my first reaction, and then over time becoming quite interested in tracking my own improvements on my own numbers.
Mm.
Yeah, I would
Next
add to
question.
that
Oh yeah.
and say that for our yep. So for our team, it's come down to the follow through element that I mentioned earlier, right? So I think that if you can use the insights to remove roadblocks and barriers within your team, then you really develop a level of trust in the support that you're providing and why you're leveraging the analytics to begin with. For those that choose to use the analytics and as a way of spying, that certainly doesn't create any level of trust, and it ultimately doesn't improve the work lives of those that are working within your team. So for me, I've seen a tremendously positive response in that we talk about the personal insights in our one-on-ones with my direct reports on a weekly basis. It gives me an opportunity to ask questions such as, what do you need from me? What is getting in your way? Where do you see your common sources of distractions? Here's where I'm seeing them in your data. Does that resonate? Does that not resonate? And so I think having a conversation like that week over week, using the data as evidence and as a foundation from which we can, both the employee and I can respond, has proven to be tremendously positive for them.
Nice. Okay. Next question comes from Vu, who's wondering, is this a subscription service or what is the price model?
It is a subscription service. The way this solution works is that you go to ActivTrak.com and you can sign up for a free trial. Actually, you have two options. You can sign up just to a free permanent license to see some of your own information. But if you go above 3 users, then you get into one of our paid plans. And that's the way we charge for it, is by individual that we're tracking information for. So that's the way you do it, but we make it super easy to get you up and going. You just go create an account, install those trackers, and then after that you immediately start seeing information show up in your dashboards and start looking at some of the analytics that I showed through the demonstration. But you basically have the ability to start for free and try it out and determine whether this is for you and your organization.
Okay. Sounds good. Well, I think that's a great place to wrap up. That's about all the time we have for questions. So I just wanted to put up the slide with some resources. So feel free to or please click on those and check them out for more information. So this has been a lot of fun. I learned a lot. I'm sure the audience did as well. It's a really cool product that you've created at ActivTrak, and it's been great having you both present here. So thank you so much for your time. And I also want to
Thank you very much for the time.
Oh yeah, sure. Yep. And thanks to ActivTrak in general, and I want to thank everyone out in the audience for joining us and for all your questions. Again, please make sure that you check out those handout tabs right there where you can sign up for ActivTrak, and also visit all these resources on the screen. With that, it's time now for the announcement of our $300 Amazon gift card door prize winner. So this is going out to Mark Holcomb from South Carolina. Congratulations, Mark. We'll reach out to you to deliver that prize. And finally, I just want to thank everyone again who joined us on the webinar. Stay safe. Have a great day. Bye-bye.